Drink Pepsi Black from max taste to no sugar. Pepsi Black time, 18 hours.
The news from Guyana, the region and the world. Compiled in the News Talk Radio newsroom and powered by DemeraraWaves.com.
The news comes to you compliments of KFC. It's finger licking good. First, the highlights. Leader of the Liberty and Justice Party and Deputy Speaker of the National Assembly, Lennox Schumann, is calling on the chairman of the Guyana Elections Commission to seek international help to hire a new chief elections officer. The Caribbean Court of Justice is hearing arguments today by lawyers of Marcus Bisram to overturn Guyana's appeal court decision to agree with the Guyana Director of Public Prosecution to recommit Bisram to stand trial for the alleged murder of a Berbice carpenter. Former parliamentarian for the APNU-AFC, Ms. Vanessa Kissoon, and her suspension from the PNCR lifted yesterday by the Central Executive Committee. And Health Minister Dr. Frank Anthony says more COVID deaths are expected as there exists reluctance to take the COVID vaccine. In the region, a former finance minister, Harold Lovell, and two of his former United Progressive Party colleagues, Dr. Jackie Quinn and Wilmot Daniel, appeared in court facing charges of embezzlement, corruption, and conversion. And two CARICOM countries are among 6 new countries whose nationals have become eligible to participate in agricultural and non-agricultural programs in the United States this year. And internationally, the man who led last month's military takeover in Sudan has made himself head of a new transitional ruling council. Details of these and other stories in a moment.
On the go and need to grab a quick bite, but tired of the same dreary food? Well, KFC is here to brighten your day with a delicious, mouth-watering meal with their 9 convenient locations: Movie Town, Vlissingen Road, Mandela Avenue, Regent Street, Stabroek, Hink Street, Breeden Hoop, Parika, and the Amazonia Mall. Now open from 9 a.m. to 10:30 p.m. And they're there to welcome you every day. KFC.
It's finger licking good.
And now the news in detail. I'm Dennis Chabrol. Good evening. Leader of the Liberty and Justice Party, LJP, and the Deputy Speaker of the National Assembly, Lennox Schumann, is calling on the chairman of the Guyana Elections Commission to seek international help as part of the process to hire a new chief elections officer. Mr. Schumann, in a letter dated today, asked GCOM Chairman, retired Judge Claudette Singh, to solicit and accept support from international partners to appoint a CEO for GCOM and other important officers. Mr. Schumann in his letter says that that method will help to restore the integrity, credibility, and public confidence in the Commission that is so desperately needed at this juncture. GCOM government commissioners tabled and voted for the removal of former Chief Elections Officer Keith Lowenfield and his deputy Roxanne Myers following the March 2020 regional and general elections, there before the courts charged with electoral fraud. The chairman voted with the government commissioners as a tiebreaker to end the contracts of the two officers. The deputy speaker says if GCOM does not put in place an independent process, the public fears that that electoral management body will be manipulated and undermined again. Mr. Schumann points out that the commission is currently partisan, with only People's Progressive Party and coalition APNU-AFC commissioners. This, he says, shuts out representation from smaller parties. Mr. Schumann says the lessons of the 2020 elections are a close reminder of the need for an independent commission. The LJP leader reminded that reports from international election observer groups dating back to the initial elections that came out of the Price-Carter formula have made consistent calls for a revision of a variety of processes to ensure an impartial and unbiased commission. The Caribbean Court of Justice, CCJ, has hinted at the need to modify the law to prevent Guyana's Director of Public Prosecutions DPP from directing the court to commit persons. Attorney Darshan Ramdani, who is defending a murder-accused Marcus Bisram, is asking the CCJ to strike down the appeal court decision to agree with the DPP. The attorney says an individual is entitled to fairness at the judicial level.
And so I suppose you're saying you cannot have a fair trial unless you have an independent judiciary. Is that what you're saying?
That is the core constitutional principle, and that Section 72 must stand down. And that the separation of powers is also contained in Article 144. That's a core constitutional principle. Section 72 must stand down. The rule of law is also contained in Article 144, a core constitutional principle. Section 72 must stand down. So we say that there as well, Millard.
The DPP told the CCJ that she acted in accordance with the Constitution to rightly request and commit Ms. Bisram to trial.
The DPP is pursuant to Section 72. The DPP is merely continuing a charge. The DPP can institute a charge. The DPP can continue a charge. The DPP can institute a charge, and the magistrate hears that charge. The magistrate hearing a charge and determining a charge that the DPP has instituted does not in any way suggest that the DPP's institution of the charge or continuation of the charge is a usurpation of the judicial function of the magistrate.
The CCJ President, Mr. Saunders, says the litigants may be asked to make further submission and hinted that the Apex Court may reserve its decision. Bisram moved to the CCJ after the Guyana Court of Appeal on May 31 agreed with the DPP that there is sufficient evidence to commit him to stand trial. The prosecution's case was that Bisram had instructed 5 other men to kill Naraindat because he had retaliated when he, Bisram, had allegedly held the man's penis and buttock. Evidence provided by Guyanese police showed that Naraindat had been beaten, thrown in a drain, removed and placed in a car trunk, and placed in a road to make it appear as if Naraindat had been struck down by a vehicle. After languishing 7 years in the political wilderness due to disagreement with then People's National Congress Reform PNCR General Secretary Oscar Clark, Ms. Vanessa Kissoon's suspension from their party was lifted on Wednesday. This now paves the way for her return to frontline politics. Ms. Kissoon could not immediately be contacted, but a high-level party source confirmed late Wednesday night that the PNCR Central Executive Committee unanimously approved a motion tabled by retired Rear Admiral Gary Best. Sources said that Mr. Best, who is also an attorney at law, tabled the motion on the basis that her reinstatement has to follow the procedure of a motion which he sponsored. The motion was reportedly seconded by veteran executive member Aubrey Norton, who, like Ms. Kissoon, is from Linden Region 10, Upper Damarara, Upper Berbice. Wednesday's vote had its genesis in a letter that PNCR General Secretary Amna Ali read to the Central Executive Committee in making out a case for Ms. Kissoon's reinstatement. The source said that Ms. Ali's letter essentially stated that it had been several years and both Kissoon and then PNCR General Secretary Clark had settled their differences. The Guyana Water Incorporated, GWI, says about 225 residents at Suazdak, East Bank, Damarara are getting potable water for the first time. The utility company says they live at Guruhu and Grant Sand Road, Suazdak. GWI says that it spent about $6 million Guyana dollars to extend the distribution network by 1,000 meters. GWI's Chief Executive Officer Sheikh Baksh told residents that they will have to apply for individual service connections in order to receive water for the first time. GWI says its East Bank team will be collaborating with the Suicide Coverdale Neighborhood Democratic Council to take the service to the residents on Friday, November 12. That's tomorrow. GWI says about 50 households at Back Grand Sand Road who are without access to potable water will soon be connected to the network. Health Minister Dr. Frank Anthony says more COVID deaths are expected as many persons are still not willing to take a COVID vaccine. The ministry recorded 3 deaths in the last 24 hours, taking the toll to 955.
In the past 24 hours, we've had 3 deaths, and we are going to continue to see deaths if people are not taking vaccination. What we have noticed is that most of these deaths are persons who are unvaccinated. So we have something that we know that protects you, and that is getting vaccinated. And we still have, at this point in time, people who have not taken their vaccine. And many of the persons who are dying right now, when we check their vaccine status, they're unvaccinated.
The health minister says positive cases in a few regions are showing an increase.
So over the last 24 hours, we've recorded 98 new cases of COVID-19 across the country. And currently we have 2,444 active cases, with most of those cases being in Region 3. We have 1,085 cases in Region 3 currently. We also have 724 cases in Region 4, 215 cases in Region 6, and 194 cases in Region 10.
Dr. Anthony says generally positive cases are on the decline, including hospitalization.
Of the active cases, we currently have 49 in the hospital, with 36 of those at the Ocean View Hospital. And of those 36 at Ocean View, we now have 17 in the ICU. So generally, we have seen the numbers coming down a little bit, hospitalizations coming down, but we are also seeing in some regions an increase in cases. So like in Region 10, we have a notable increase in cases because we are now at 194, and we have seen increase in cases in Region 6.
Health Minister Dr. Frank Anthony. In Antigua, the leader of the opposition United Progressive Party, Harold Lovell, and 2 of his colleagues are on trial for allegedly taking possession of government buses. The first day of the highly anticipated bus conversion trial saw only one witness after hours of discourse. Mr. Lovell and 2 of his former UPP colleagues, Dr. Jackie Quinn Leandro and Wilmot Daniel, appeared in court facing charges of embezzlement, corruption, and conversion. According to the Observer News, they allegedly converted 3 Daewoo buses donated to the former UPP administration by the government of Korea, worth $218,520 each for their personal use. The prosecution's case is that the former government officials had the buses registered at the Antigua and Barbuda Transport Board in their names while they were in public office. The lead prosecutor in the judge-only trial is Montserrat's Director of Public Prosecutions, Ora Sullivan. He applied for changes to be made to all the indictments consisting of 9 counts, 3 per defendant. He asked that some of the information detailing the particulars of the offenses be edited. The court later heard the first witness, an investigator in the matter, who testified to executing search warrants at insurance companies where he obtained documents pertaining to the buses. After his testimony, the matter was adjourned. 2 CARICOM countries are among 6 new countries whose nationals have become eligible to participate in agricultural and non-agricultural programs in the United States this year. The Department of Homeland Security, in consultation with the Department of State, says St. Lucia and Haiti will be allowed to participate in the H-2A and H-2B visa programs in the coming year. A WIN FM News report detailing the release from Homeland Security says that apart from the two CARICOM countries, the others are Bosnia, Herzegovina, Cyprus, the Dominican Republic, and Mauritius. The notice listing the eligible countries is to be published in the Federal Register. The Department of Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas says the U.S. is committed to working with its interagency partners to ensure that companies in the United States can fill temporary or seasonal jobs for which workers are not available. Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas says the program will enable nationals from the approved countries to apply for temporary work in the United States. The H-2A program allows U.S. employers or U.S. agents who meet specific regulatory requirements to bring foreign nationals to the United States to fill temporary agricultural jobs. The H-2B program allows employers or agents who meet specific regulatory requirements to take foreign nationals to the U.S. to fill temporary non-agricultural jobs. The executive of Dominica's United Workers' Party, UWP, has suspended the party's former deputy political leader, Joshua Francis, in the wake of the public disclosure of utterances made by Francis in a private conversation gone viral. WIN FM News is reporting that last month, during a private discussion, the information was then disseminated in the public domain. Francis claims he was recorded without consent. In the conversation, the former deputy political leader heavily criticized and blamed the members of his party for his political demise because he believes his growing popularity was seen as a threat. In the purported conversation, he also accused some of his colleagues of being the culprits of his public humiliation, which later led to his arrest in a sexual assault matter. The charge has since been dropped. Francis also described the Prime Minister Roosevelt's current as a better leader than the leader of his party, Lennox Linton. At a UWP General Council meeting held earlier this week, a decision was taken to suspend Francis for 6 months in the first instance, a source within the party told Dominica News Online. And now, the BBC World Service brings you the international news.
Hello, this is the BBC News with Fiona MacDonald. The man who led last month's military takeover in Sudan has made himself head of a new transitional ruling council. General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan hasn't included any members of the civilian coalition which shared power with the military for the past 2 years. Protests erupted in parts of Khartoum shortly after the declaration. Here's Mary Harper.
There was swift condemnation of General al-Burhan's announcement. The ousted Information Minister, Hamza Balul, described it as an extension of the coup. The UN said it was very concerning. It repeated its call for civilian politicians to be released, including the deposed Prime Minister Abdallah Hamdok, who remains under house arrest. Some civilians have been appointed to the new council, but not a single member of the coalition that shared power with the military before the coup has been given a seat.
The South African president, who oversaw the end of white minority rule, has offered an unqualified apology for apartheid in a video released shortly after his death. F.W. de Klerk, who was 85, acknowledged the pain and indignity that was inflicted. The left-wing Economic Freedom Fighters Party has demanded that he be denied a state funeral. Andrew Harding reports from Johannesburg on the posthumous message.
F.W. de Klerk addressed the many critics who said he'd never truly acknowledged his own role in the horrors of racial apartheid.
I, without qualification, apologize for the pain and the hurt and the indignity and the damage that apartheid has done to black, brown and Indians.
F.W. de Klerk will always be a divisive figure, but history will record that he helped to bring freedom to South Africa.
The UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres has warned climate negotiators in Glasgow to pick up the pace. They're trying to reach a meaningful deal before the scheduled end of the COP26 summit on Friday. Mr Guterres told the gathering the world was heading for catastrophic temperature rises. He said governments weren't currently on track to take the steps needed to limit global warming to 1.5 Celsius.
The announcements here in Glasgow are encouraging, but they are far from enough. The emissions gap remains a devastating threat. The finance and adaptation gap represent a glaring injustice for the developing world.
Russian prosecutors have filed a lawsuit to dissolve the country's most prominent human rights group, Memorial. The group said in a statement that it had been accused of systematic violations of Russia's law on foreign agents. Memorial said the move was political and without legal basis. You're listening to the latest world news from the BBC. Hundreds more migrants have gathered in the Belarusian capital Minsk in the hope of eventually reaching the European Union. They told the BBC they were from Iraq and had flown via Syria or Turkey after each paying more than $3,000. For the second day running, the German Chancellor Angela Merkel has discussed the build-up of migrants with the Russian President Vladimir Putin. Paul Adams reports.
This migrant crisis, simmering for months, has now turned into a full-blown diplomatic row, with the UN Security Council holding urgent talks and the EU poised to adopt fresh sanctions against Belarus as early as next week. President Alexander Lukashenko has threatened to take action of his own, saying he could cut off Russian gas supplies to Europe. Any such decision would almost certainly have to come from Moscow, not Minsk. But the Russian President Vladimir Putin, speaking after his second phone call in as many days with the German Chancellor Angela Merkel, said the EU had to restore contacts with Belarus if it wanted to solve the crisis.
A parliamentary committee in Ghana started a public hearing on a bill that would impose tougher punishments on gay people. Proposals include increasing the jail term for same-sex relations from 3 years to 5. Another would introduce a 10-year sentence for those who promote gay rights. There were impassioned arguments for and against what's called the Family Values Bill. A 9th person has died as a result of last week's crash at the Astroworld Music Festival in the US state of Texas. Bharti Shahani, a university student, was 22. Police are investigating the stampede last Friday. The Pakistani authorities have removed an Islamist leader, Saad Rizvi, from a terrorism watch list, paving the way for his release from detention. The move is part of a deal with his organisation, Tehreek-e-Labbaik Pakistan, to end weeks of protests over an alleged blasphemy. BBC News.
And that's the news to the moment.
Planning to watch TV or listen to the radio or just enjoy a lime? Then grab a bucket of KFC finger-licking good chicken and enjoy the exciting taste of KFC and their branches on Vicinjan Road, Mandela Avenue, Regent Street, Ink Street, Stabrook Square, Breedenhoop, Parika, Movie Town, or now at the Amazonia Mall at Providence. Now open from 9 a.m. to 10:30 p.m. You'll always be enjoying the great taste of KFC.
It's finger-licking good.
Now, to end the news, a recap of the highlights. The leader of the Liberty and Justice Party and Deputy Speaker of the National Assembly, Lux Schumann, is calling on the chairman of the Guyana Elections Commission to seek international help to hire a new chief elections officer. The Caribbean Court of Justice is hearing arguments by lawyers of Marcus Bishram to overturn Guyana's appeal court decision to agree with the Director of Public Prosecutions to recommit Bishram to stand trial for an alleged murder. Former parliamentarian for APNU-AFC, Ms. Vanessa Kissoon, had her suspension from the PNCR lifted yesterday. Regionally, a former Finance Minister, Harold Lovell, and two of his former United Progressive Party colleagues in Antigua and Barbuda are in court facing charges of embezzlement, corruption, and conversion. 2 CARICOM countries are among 6 new countries whose nationals have become eligible to participate in agricultural and non-agricultural programs in the United States this year. And internationally, the man who led last month's military takeover in Sudan has made himself head of a new transitional ruling council. The news came to you with the compliments of Kentucky Fried Chicken, KFC.
This has been the news, compiled in the News Talk Radio newsroom. For ongoing updates, visit demerarawaves.com, and you can check facebook.com/demwaves and twitter.com/demwaves.
This is News Talk Radio Guyana 103.1 FM. Coming up at 6:30, we'll be having a live discussion on the implications of the proposed amendments to the Representation of the People Act. Panelists are attorneys at law Timothy Jonas and Mr. Kemrat Ramchdan, both politicians in their own right. Stay tuned to 103.1 FM for that live discussion coming up at 6:30 or 18 hours 30.
We are of Guyana. Our walks and warrows of the creeks, makers of canoes, weavers of quicks, brown complexion tan by the hot Atlantic sun. We live on toilers Guyana's coastline. The nine Amerindian tribes of Guyana, of jungle, rivers and savanna, customs, habits may differ, but true sons we are of Guyana. Caribs of the upper Cayuni, Akawayos in Mazaroni, with Sambora drum, they call their neighbors round for a spree of boats of Kasiri.